right? You know, for the art. And I always think that about acting as well. You're always pushed to like push these certain kind of roles because they'll get you awards. And I always felt uncomfortable with it. You know what I mean? Even though they were saying you had to do it, I didn't feel right about it. And that's why now I look, and I think that, you know, maybe, I don't know. I mean, looking for myself in a nuclear family now, there's no way I'd let my kids do that. And that's not a knock on my mom or anything like that. Like I said, I think there was a fair amount of naivety back then. But I certainly wouldn't, if my kids said I was going to do that, I'd be like, there's no chance. No way.
It sounds like you had good spidey senses from a young age. What about the role of your mom? Did your mom have to sign off for you to do these things at such a young age?
No, I mean, she was amazing in the sense that I think that she had a lot of confidence in me to navigate it. And she also knew that this was an opportunity to, you know, change the course of my life, because it was so kind of different to anything else that I was looking at doing in my life. And she knew that I wanted to act. She knew that was my real passion from when I was really young. And so she saw that as a way through. So, you know, in one way it was really good. You know, she was very, very encouraging. She never put me down. She never said, oh, you know, you can't do that. She's always like, yeah, you know, if you believe in yourself, you can do it. And I believe that she, like I said, she had the ultimate confidence, and she did, you know, come down with me to London to meet with the agents and all that. And so for that period of time, I think that she thought that I was okay. I mean, look, they're sending kids off to war at 18, right? And in the past, kids would go off. You know, I know there's a guy that I know very well called Gary O'Neill, and he lied to go to Vietnam at 14. So I think some people are more savvy than others. You know what I mean? And I think the fact that there was a group of us at that time that she felt like I would be okay, and ultimately I was.
So was your mum right then? Were you able to parlay that early work to build a resume to get into TV? Was that the progression?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think it was more that I needed to go and hone my craft by doing my degree. So when I went to Middlesex University, there was no way that my mom couldn't afford to even pay for me to have any food. So when I went down there, it was just me by myself. So I had to figure out a way of doing that, of earning money so that I could eat. I remember going to, is it Quick Save? Like Quick Save. I go to Quick Save and I'd buy like 2 loaves of bread, and that was it. That was what I would eat for the week. You know, I ate a lot of toast. So, you know, it taught me the value. I mean, I always knew the value of money anyway, because, you know, when you come from nothing, that's it. So you have to watch every single penny. And I think that instilled even more the work ethic in me, that I'd look at things and I'd say, okay, well, I've got to give it everything, because this might be the last chance, the last shot I get before I'm packing up and going back and living at home. And it's still with me now, to be honest. I still, you know, I'll work until 2-3 o'clock in the morning writing. And that was really instilled in me. But yeah, I mean, what it allowed me to do, because I did, you know, GCSE, drama, then I did A-level theatre studies, then I went to do a performing arts degree and actually left before the end of it, because I was getting a lot of work. I was getting people sniffing around me, and I'm like, what use is a performing arts degree? It's not worth the paper it's written on. It's all about, you know, because back then you couldn't really get a degree from RADA or Lambda. It was just, you know, you go to drama school. And so I was like, okay, I'm in the same boat as anyone else, so I need to take the opportunity when it comes, and that's what I did.
How did your first TV opportunity come about?
It's a great, you know what? I've never been asked that. That's a really great question. So I was making money doing commercials, and I got an agent from that, because the casting director said, hey, I think there's this agency that would be right for you. And I signed with them. And then pretty much the first audition I had was Emmerdale. And I went in there, and I think I was 23. and that was it. I got it. And my friend John Stagg, who was the publicist, I eventually became friends with him at Emmerdale. He really, really pushed for me. I know that, and I'm very grateful to him for that. He told me afterwards, and that was it. And I was actually terrified when I went on set. I remember going on there, and there's what's the name of the wall pack, right? So my first scene was actually outside the wall pack, right? And they said to me, all right, well, you've got to have a pint. And for those of you that don't know, like the pints there are like really, really watered down shandy, right? So you'll see them and it has the color and the appearance of beer, but it's not. Well, I'm a Guinness drinker. So I said, I'll have a pint of Guinness because I'm like, if I'm going to drink it in the scene, well, I'm going to drink it in the scene. But you got to keep drinking it, right? So I come out and I'll never forget it, Shaun, there was a coach full of people that turned up. And I'm like, okay, all right, because I was nervous. You don't want to mess up, and so I drank half the pint, and they were like, "All right, going again," and I was like, "Oh no!" So they filled up the pint again. So I drank another half pint. Going again, I'm like, "Oh no, I've made a mistake." You know what I mean? And I was getting drunk on set, and I was like, "Oh no!" But anyway, I mean, I kind of got through it. I did my little arc on the show, which was great. And that was my first idea of fame. And you got to remember back then, I think for Emmerdale got like 13 million people watching it, which was massive. So I went from being unknown to kind of known with a little arc on it. And then when I got Coronation Street, it was just like overnight, couldn't walk down the street anymore. It was insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said you were 23 for Emmerdale. I mean, how does that feel to land that job at that age?
I think that I never take anything for granted. So when I get it, the moment I get it, I'm kind of like, I've got to work hard to keep it, and then I've got to work hard to get the next gig. So that's all I was thinking about. For me, it was survival. I never really went like, yes, I'm here, and that's why, when I got Coronation Street, it was the same thing. I was just like, okay, I'm coming into an established show, and I got to do my best. I got to put my best foot forward. And then I got the award, the National Television Awards, and I didn't think I was going to get it because I'd only been in it a little period of time. And then I was like, all right, I've done it. I've done very well on this. Now I want to move on and do something else before I kind of get too comfortable, like enjoy the money, and enjoy everything that comes with it. Because back then, it was a massive show. 19 million people used to watch it. And, I played soccer at Wembley. I played at Main Road, So you start getting all these things, these nice things, flying places in helicopters, doing this. And I was like, I need to move on, else I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to, like many people do, stay in the show. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to prove to myself that I could hang with the best and push myself as best as I could.
So the top actors then in Coronation Street and Emmerdale, were they nice people who mentored you, or were they egomaniacs?
They were nice people. They really were nice people. I mean, I remember, I guess on Coronation Street, like one of my longtime friends now, Charlie Lawson, and people don't realize, like, these are very, very good actors. They're very, very good to be able to turn up, get the lines. Like when you move on to movies, it's easy. You'll have a scene and you'll have the entire day to do one scene. And on Coronation Street, you're hitting 4 or 5 scenes a day sometimes. So, I mean, I look back then, I was on around the same time as Denise Welch, who has been a lifelong friend of mine now. Amazing. Sally Dinover, Tina Hobley, who I hope I'm not missing anyone out there, but just really, really terrific, solid people. I wouldn't say they mentored me because they're kind of like, hey man, you're here. You're good enough. I remember, what's his name? Baldwin. I don't know if it's his character or that's how long it's been now, but he was really sweet. He came over to me and he was like, hey, listen, Matt, this is, if you want to get a car, this is what you've got to do because you start making money now. And he did. He came over to me and he was really sweet. And Brian Park, who was the producer, when I went up to him and I said, I'm leaving, he said, Matt, I think you should stay another year, like to solidify, your presence in the UK. And in one way, he was right, because if I hadn't have gone off and had the career that I'd had, then, I'd probably go, well, why didn't I stay for one more year and done what like Michelle Keegan had done, or, one of those other people, and built or Tamsin Outhwaite, what she did on EastEnders is build a resume so then she can go off and have her own show. But I was like, I want to do movies and then I want to go to Hollywood. And everyone's like, sure. Nobody's done it from Coronation Street. So I did.
So what was the game plan to transition from Coronation Street to Hollywood?
You think I had a game plan? No, that's funny. No, I was just like, I'm leaving because I don't want to get typecast, and I'll see how it goes. I mean, it was literally that. And I felt like I'd kind of shown a little bit of what I could do. And then the next movie I got was with Michael Caine opposite him. And I'd trained as a boxer for a year before. I saw that the role was coming up. So I went and called my buddy Richie Woodall up and I was like, hey, I need to learn how to be a really good boxer. And so I trained with him. And then when the opportunity arose that I could go and work with Michael, and I met with the director and he said, so can you fight? And I said, I'll fight anyone for this role. Like, put me in the ring with them and I'll do it. And he was like, all right, we'll come and watch you train. And it's kind of funny actually, because Richie trained in a power station in Telford, and it was literally a spit and sawdust gym where you go in there, and me and Richie would train there, and I got the gig. And then from there, people started going, hang on a minute, who is this person? And I was auditioning for Star Wars. They were doing the Star Wars auditions at that point. And so I got called back like 4 or 5 times for that. And so because I was, moving up the ranks in whatever they were going to do, I don't know eventually how they broke it down, but I couldn't do the last audition because back then, it's not like now, right? I know it sounds silly, but you would have to like film yourself on a mini DV camera. You'd have to put the tape, and send it by FedEx over to LA. And I was shooting at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was knackered, and I just couldn't do it. And I missed out on the last round. But a few agents had, through Robin Gerland, who was the casting director, they were like, hey, you should see this kid. He's their words, not mine. He's pretty good. And they came over, and then I signed with one of them, and that was it. And then they were like, okay, we want you to come over to LA. I said, okay, I'll see you next week, which is what I told you last time. They were like, yeah, whatever. Brits always say that. And I went, and then within 2 weeks, I got Black Hawk Down. So that was kind of crazy. Yeah.
All right. We've got almost 4,000 watching live. We're with Matthew Marsden. I'm going to put all of his links in the chat. You've got Twitter. We've got his YouTube. We've got his Instagram. Please support and follow his work. And there's tons of content on his channel. He's live streaming now, and he's doing regular videos. So go over there and give him some love. All right. If you've just joined us, we're talking about Matthew's trajectory from his humble origin, getting into acting, modeling, drama in the UK, and now he's taking the leap, still in his 20s, I believe, over to Hollywood. What was it like arriving? How did you establish yourself there? Find a place to live, etc.?
It was amazing. I remember getting off the plane. It was 2000, so it was, pre 9/11. And so I remember, I got off the plane and I got a Mustang convertible I rented, and I was like, oh, I'm here. And I stayed on Sunset Boulevard, and it was just amazing. I remember the first meeting I went into, which was with my manager, and I walk in there, and in the lobby, Famke Janssen was sitting there, from X-Men. Like, she was sitting there, and then there were all these people walking in and out. And I was like, what is going on in my life? I mean, because I think that for me, it's just a job, right? It's a job, and I never get carried away with it. I never believe what anyone said. I mean, I never believed the hype. But so anyway, I started meeting with people. I got an amazing response, of course. And then I get a call one day, and they're like, "Hey, listen, you're going to go meet with Ridley Scott and Jerry Bruckheimer tomorrow." And I was like, "You are what?" Because I mean, I love Bad Boys. I love all, those movies, and I loved all Ridley's movies. And so I went in there, and next thing I know, I'm sitting there opposite Ridley Scott and Jerry Bruckheimer, and you get to a level where you don't have to audition. So I was just talking to them, and they were feeling me out. And then I remember coming back home, and it was like they say they've put a pin in you, right? So that means that they're blocking you out, that potentially you've got this job. And then I remember it was like midnight, and my mom was in bed, and my agent called me, and they were like, "Hey, listen, you got it. You got Black Hawk Down." So I had a bottle of champagne in the fridge, and I went and I got it, and I drove around to my mom's and knocked on the door, and I went, "I've done it. I've got my first Hollywood movie." And so I ticked off. So then, so that was 2000. So 27.
Wow. Did you party at this point? Did you go out and celebrate, or did you stay grounded?
No, I mean, I was like, I've got it. But then it's like, okay, what's next? Right? You got to work hard. You got to start being focused on what's next. And that's always been my work ethic. It's always been like, okay, you got it, but you haven't done it yet. So, you got to go on there, and you've got to prove yourself. And I was the same, even when I worked with Michael Caine. You sit there and you're like, hang on a minute, I can't believe this is happening. Andy Serkis was in that movie as well, Frank Harper, Martin Landau in China, the first movie I did. And then all of a sudden you turn up and we're doing training in Georgia, and it's Ewan McGregor's there, and Tom Sizemore, all these other guys, Tom Hardy, and but we're all there, right? We're all in it. And then we went over to Morocco, and I did 6 months on that movie. I was in the second scene and the last scene ever to be filmed on it. So yeah, I mean, you kind of like, I don't know what's going to come. And then, you go to the premiere. The premiere was that was the moment where you kind of like, hang on a minute, because we had number one, the first premiere for Black Hawk Down was in Los Angeles. It was at the Academy. So Jerry Bruckheimer and Ridley had us all stand up, and you're looking around, and Will Smith's there, and all these like giant actors, and they're coming up, and they're like, "Hey man, that was a great movie, well done." And you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. And then of course, coming back home, we did the premiere in London, and it was insane, because we'd been put in this like cauldron back when we were doing all the training, and then we'd done the film, and then we hadn't seen each other, and then we come back, and we'd all got our limos pulling up. So, one by one, we're all pulling up, and there was just this like massive crowd at Leicester Square. And you're like, I've done it. I've done it. Like I've done. And then the movie won 2 Oscars. And so, when people want to come on, and they always want to knock you, right? Especially after what happened to me when I kind of got canceled by Hollywood, they always kind of say, well, you just this and that. And I'm like, you can never take away from me what I've done. I dreamt of this when I was a kid. You know what I mean? You can't take it away from me. So I don't care what you have to say, and those aren't the things actually, Shaun, that define me as a man anyway. They're not the things that are important, but those achievements are certainly, I can look back in my life now and tick them off. And even when I moved to Dallas, I realized, like, I'd got my national television award. It'd been in the box on, in storage for 20 years. I've got posters that I've got here on my wall now, and these ones behind that I'd never put up because, I'm just like, okay, whatever. And now I realize that it's a legacy for my kids to understand where their dad had come from and what I've achieved in my life. But to tell them that those things aren't really important. Like, what matters is the content of your character and what kind of a human being you are, because all that is transitory, right? It doesn't matter in the scheme of things. If it meant something, then, you know, the guys that came out with their woke video would really mean something, and it really doesn't. So
All right. So, you know, you fantastic success that you had at such an early age. How long were you active in Hollywood for?
I was there until 3 years ago.
Okay. So during that period of time, then, you know, you went to awards ceremonies, you went to parties, after parties, etc. And you previously said to me, you know, you've described in this interview today, you've got this spidey sense for danger. And you previously said to me that dangers were presenting themselves. For example, they were trying to find out if you were gay. You heard a story of, I think it was a very famous female actress who'd been through some things. Could you just elaborate more on the dangers, how you navigated through that, and what you heard, or people what were you approached?
Yeah, I think that so firstly, it's important to understand like the levels that you get to. So like when you get to a certain level in Hollywood, you don't have to audition, right? They just call you up and they say, you know, come on in, we want to talk to you about this. And after, so I did Black Hawk Down, and then I did let me get this right. Then I did Helen of Troy, I believe. I did a pilot with Jerry Bruckheimer after that. And then I did Helen of Troy, and that was at the point where I was getting calls to come in and just come in and meet. And then what happens is you kind of like get offered certain jobs, and I'll be like, I don't really want to do this. And then people will say, well, why? Why don't you want to do it? Instead of just going, okay, he doesn't want to do it. They'll want a reason, and very often, like, you know, like I said, I didn't want to do. I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do gay roles, right? I don't want to do them, right? It's not my. I want to do action roles. That's what I want to do. And it's funny because a lot of actors will, for example, they won't play the villain, right? They'll say because it tarnishes my image, right? Like I just want to be seen as the hero. That's a very common thing. And I just don't want to do those roles. That they don't. It's not attractive to me. It doesn't. It's not what I want to do. Right. I want to do action roles because back then this was pre-Avengers. This is pre all the superhero movies. So there was a real gap for action films. And I'd played the villain in Anacondas, and everything was going really well. But then you start they keep asking you to go into these roles, like over and over and over again. I'm like, why am I not getting asked to do other roles over and over and over again? Why is it this? And then there's this kind of pressure that, you know, there's the joke about it that if you want to go and win an award, you've got to play like someone who's disabled or someone who's, you know, historically been discriminated against or whatever. And I was just like, this isn't what I want to do. I just want to go and do action roles, which I ended up doing. But they certainly just kept pushing that. And I was like, I don't know why. And I remember one role I got that I got offered, or, you know, there was another one that I got asked to read for. It was so bad, like sexually explicit, that I was like, what is going on? Like, why do you keep pushing me down this route, right? And it wasn't the agents that were pushing me down that route. It was the fact that I was getting these offers from certain people, and I was just like not down with it. And then I think that if you, again, unfortunately in Hollywood, there can be a whole host of reasons why you don't take a role, right? Like I said, I don't want to play a villain. You don't play a villain. I love playing villains. That you have the most fun playing villains, and normally the best actors play villains, right? Think of Alan Rickman, played the greatest villains, and I just felt like I got questioned why. You know what I mean? A little bit more than if I just said I don't want to play the villain. And I shouldn't have to quantify why I want to play a role or not, or I shouldn't be forced to do a role one way or the other. So there was certainly that. And then I did get asked, I think I told you this last time, I got a call late at night, and it was like one of my agents, and they're like, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so really would like to meet you. And it was an actress. And I was like, I didn't know, because I've got a really big audition the next day for a massive film. And I was like, are they testing me? right? Are they testing me because I'm going to go out partying at 12 o'clock the night before I'm meeting a massive director, or is this an opportunity? And either way, I was looking at it and I'm like, either way, I'm going to say no. And so I said no. I was with my to-be wife. So that was one of the things that I certainly felt, because I wasn't going to the parties anymore. I kind of like, and when I say going to the parties, I don't mean Diddy parties. It was just like, hey, listen, the Maxim party's on, and do you want to go? And I'll be like, yeah, because as a single guy, why not? Right? You meet a lot of the people that you know there, and certainly in that little period of time, I went from like 2000 to 2005. That's when the Black Hawk Down guys like took over Hollywood. If you think about it, think about all the guys that popped from that film: that Eric Bana, Tom Hardy, Nikolai Waldo, Bill Fichtner, like all these guys, because they went after the best young actors around. They were